Every now and again, someone will say underneath my posts, oh, this post made me breathe a bit better, or it took some kind of anxiety away. And my favourite writers did the same for me. And I always respond, oh, I'm really just borrowing the atmosphere of my favourite writers or favourite thinkers who did the same for me and passing it on. Yeah, nothing I do is original. The atmosphere that I put into my stuff isn't an original atmosphere. It's borrowed from the people who helped me in my 20s, 30s, and early 40s. And I thought I'd talk about them. I thought I'd mention the three or four people who really just alleviated something in me when I was feeling like crap. Like my brain constantly trying to attack itself, and it would kind of sort of throw a spanner in my brain's works and and pull me out of my body, and I'd feel like a sense of relief. So the first one is Michael Leunig. He's an Australian cartoonist philosopher. This isn't his most famous book at all, but it's a one I picked up at a secondhand bookstore in the late 90s. This is from 1970 something. But he's like a cartoonist. A lot of them are wordless. His stuff began kind of wordlessly, and he added more words as he got older. And eventually, I remember discovering his photo on the back cover. When I was a kid, because Mum always used to put his stuff on the fridge, cut him out of the newspaper and put him on the fridge. And I thought, a human makes this stuff. This is when I was 12, 13, 14. I thought, do humans make art? That's weird. I thought they were just art was immaculately conceived. Didn't make sense. And then I thought, oh, so I'm a human. Maybe I can make it too. Oh, maybe. I'll just see. And so, yeah, I followed him. Through my teens and then into my 20s. I read a lot as a kid, but I didn't really read much in my 20s. But he could sort of simplify the crap out of the heaviness. I feel like that's what all my favourite writers do. They take complicated, messy heaviness and vacuum seal it and take almost like alchemize the weight into this incredible, beautiful lightness, and you actually want to wear that. What was this former heaviness, you just wear it like a light sheet over yourself. No, I feel like a benign, beautiful ghost. I don't feel like I'm wearing the heaviness of myself, because they take complicated shit and simplify the crap out of it, make it so light that you're happy to be alive. And that's what I love about my favourite writers. Then into my 30s, I found Charles Bukowski's stuff. He's really super popular now. Even I got a signed edition of this book. This is probably my favourite one of his. It was his last. There's his signature. This one was his last book, a full book of poetry that he wrote. He started off kind of as a bit of a character, as a bit of a willfully playing up to this drunk machismo manly kind of dude who'd get into adventures and fights and get drunk. I didn't mind that stuff, but I loved his later stuff where he got a bit gentler. He'd been beaten a little bit by life. And I noticed that a lot with my favourite writers. It's almost like the more frail they get, the more magic and lightness comes through. The physicality of frailness brings this incredible beauty and weird strength into their work that wasn't there before. There's almost like when the body's strong, their writing becomes really, it's weak. Charles Bukowski played three characters. He admittedly played three characters. There was his alter ego Chinesky. Then there was Charles Bukowski, who the world knew him as Charles Bukowski. who was this drunk poet talking about his life. And then there was Hank, who his friends called him. So there was almost 3 layers. There was Hank, the person who was quite mild-mannered and polite. His editor said he never saw him drunk. His longtime editor, John Martin, said, I never saw Hank drunk or off his face. But then there's Charles Bukowski, the poet, who he's known for, Charles Bukowski, that way around. And then there's Chinaski, who he writes about as almost like an alter ego, Charles Bukowski's alter ego. So it's almost like three skins, with Hank being the thinnest skin, the person who he was, who friends talked in his letters, his closest friends would call him Hank, or who he'd sign them off as Hank if he knew the person well. His stuff I discovered in my 30s, like 20 years ago. And there was something to his writing where it felt like, oh, this is dangerous. It could go anywhere. He's saying stuff that I didn't necessarily agree with, but it had the spirit of danger. And I love the spirit of danger. Like, I don't know where this is going. And finally, here's a writer who's actually breaking the fourth wall and talking directly to me. Because you read nearly every other writer and you know you already know where you can feel the robot systems in their head ticking over, using all the correct opinions and there's a you know the destination, you know what's going to happen, you know what they're saying, you know that there's the stale concepts they're borrowing from, but Charles Bukowski's like, where's this going? Whoa, don't. It's disorientating sometimes and also very familiar. And it was just like, oh, this is how my brain works like this. And I felt it was like a relief to feel that chaos, this controlled chaos. It felt like I could outsource my own, and it was like, here you go, have my chaos for a bit. In the book, yeah, it was a massive relief. Especially, I'd get home after work, sit by the train tracks, and read his stuff, and I'd write as well. I'd started writing, thinking, oh, maybe I could write my own stuff that makes me feel better. After work, reading his stuff, I finally felt, this guy, he understands. I don't feel alone. Everyone in this world makes no sense. Everyone felt like a robot after reading his stuff. I know that's kind of a bit. Is it some kind of egocentric thing? I don't know, but you feel like everyone's working on some kind of set of train tracks and program, and he kind of broke that for me. He made me feel like, oh, thank God, someone's free in their head. And it was a relief. It was like someone's alive, and this guy Bukowski was already dead, but his words were so alive. And while he wrote a lot of crap, the bits that were great were like just beat everything. It was amazing, and it was such a relief. While Michael Leunig was beautiful in his own way, the cartoonist, I always felt there was at the time I didn't know it, but after reading Charles Bukowski, I look back on Michael Leunig and go, he's kind of holding something back. He's not saying the whole truth, and maybe that's wrong. That could be totally wrong. But I felt like there was another wall that Bukowski broke through for me, and I still love Michael Leunig, of course, too. And then there was Alan Watts. He's gone internet famous as well from about 2009. That's when I discovered him, when the South Park creators started posting his videos to their cartoons. And Alan Watts was like everyone knows who Alan Watts is. British philosopher, self-proclaimed spiritual entertainer, studied Eastern philosophy, moved from the UK to California and lived on a houseboat and whatnot, and got famous in San Francisco in the late 60s, early 70s, died from booze in his late 50s. He said some stuff where I went, oh, yeah, you're saying this is real. This is real. From my experience, that it felt so real. He was just breaking down systems of thought and systems that we live in, and spoke so plainly about it. And his smoker's chuckle is so fun to listen to. He's so relaxing, and there's a lightness to the way he speaks. I struggle to read his books, his words on paper, more than that. It's quite dense. But his lectures where he's talking, there's something else comes out. He was born to almost be spoken word more than a writer. Even though he's an amazing writer, clearly when he's doing his lectures and stuff, hundreds of hours, I don't know, recorded of his stuff from the 60s and the 70s. His stuff made me feel super sane, and I was listening to his stuff at the same time as I was reading Bukowski's stuff. But yeah, they both simplified the crap. All three of them simplified the crap out of a world that tries to complicate and obfuscate and kind of hide lies behind complicated things, and it's everything so simple, and just taking the weight out of the lie to the weightless simple truth. and it's such a relief, because we kind of feels like we haul around lies, the way we think, the way we perceive the world. And it kind of extracts all the lies out of your head, and you can see clearly for a little bit. You can go, I feel normal. And then I needed to continuously redose myself on their stuff, because the lies would just implant themselves back in my head, and I'd feel stupid again. And I just read their stuff. But the trouble is, they've got Michael Leunig, Alan Watts, Charles Bukowski. They all have about 5 great ideas in them, each one of them, and they've re-articulated these 5 great ideas continuously, and they have the perfect version of each of those 5 ideas that you can track as they got older. They perfected and honed those 5 ideas that they'd come up with, but after a while, those 5 ideas just felt like a repetition, and even to me, they became stale, and I couldn't see them anymore or feel them. And that's kind of when I started to write. I felt like, shit, maybe I've got to invent my own continuation and borrow their atmosphere, but find something new in that atmosphere. I don't know, but that's how I felt. Just trying to find a new path by borrowing the inertia of what they'd already established, and even the lineage of these 3 writers. Like Charles Bukowski, I've read Celine and D.H. Lawrence's poetry, and you can see the lines and the atmosphere that Charles Bukowski's borrowed from to create his own version of these writers that he kind of smacked together and created his own new world. And Alan Watts borrowing from the atmosphere of G.K. Chesterton, and who was a kind of a spiritual Western writer from over 100 years ago. And Alan Watts borrowed his whole character vibe from Dr. Fu Manchu, this fictional villain from a comic strip. And you can see it in the way he dresses and his beard and all that sort of stuff. And even Charles Bukowski's the character. There was a short story I read by James Thurber from the New Yorker about this crazy, wild, drunken poet who did whatever, and it's only about 6 pages long. I can't remember the title of the story, but I stumbled across it. And I know Charles Bukowski's talked about James Thurber being an influence, and it's almost like he's borrowed the character from this James Thurber story in the same way that Alan Watts borrowed Dr. Fu Manchu, the evil villain from a comic strip. And so there's the character, and then there's the literary influences of both. And then there's Michael Leunig, who's it was a bit harder to find his influences, but I'm starting to suss them out the older I get, because there was less about him on the internet at the time. But yeah, these 3 poets, writers, thinkers saved me in my 30s. I finally felt less alone. I felt like, oh, here we go. Here are some people who are actually saying real stuff that no one's saying. no one's saying it. And I felt like I was alive for the first time. Like I'd woken up. I was like, finally, here we go. Here we go. And I miss that feeling, because there's no one at the moment who makes me feel that way. And these 3 people, my little holy trinity, they've run out of juice for me the older I get. I can't feel their vibes as much as I once did. But yeah, that's why I write. I'm glad that when I see people comment underneath, oh, this made me feel a sense of relief, and I comment back, I'm just borrowing the atmosphere of relief that my favorite writers brought for me. So I'm stealing their atmosphere and passing it on. That's all I'm doing. There's nothing new. But I feel like I'm trying to continue in that tradition as best as I can, in my own kind of way, with my own words. And yeah,